Hello everyone, Down here with an update on the 83 Mustang project. This is basically going to be the first update of the season of working on this. I've been buying parts for this thing, for the rear end, to convert it over to a disc brake setup. These are the original Ford rims. These are the 14-inch. They're only 5.5 inches wide, but this is the stock rims that came on a GT back in the day. They refer to these as wagon wheels because of the multi-number of spokes there. But anyway, these I found on eBay as completely refurbished, and I got them for like $105 a piece. See, they've been all remachined all the way out to the lip, all the way down in the center, and then they recoated everything. So this has got the correct silver finish here, gray silver type finish, and then they got a real thick, heavy clear coat on them. The back sides, they didn't clear coat the whole thing, but they're a nice job. You can see the runs in it where the stuff was really thick. So, but this is what I've been up to. I'm converting this over to disc brakes, and the problem with this is because of these 14-inch rims, you don't have room for anything large as far as disc is concerned. So the 86, 78 Turbo Coupe Thunderbirds back in the day, they had a 7.5-inch rear end just like this GT, and they had 10-inch disc rotors, 10-inch rotors, and they were vented rotors. So these are the thick rotors that are, you know, about 7/8 inch thick. And then those are the original calipers and brackets for a Turbo Coupe Thunderbird. That was a 4-cylinder turbocharged Thunderbird. It was kind of like an early predecessor to the SHO Tauruses. And then the supercharged and turbocharged Mustang. They had the 85 Mustang that was an SPO, I believe. But anyway, they had bigger brakes on them and bigger wheels as well. So in order to make everything fit, I had to buy Thunderbird parts. And those are only 10-inch rotors. And if you can see up in there, they just clear. And so this looks really good. So after putting this all together, I noticed that the brake caliper was kind of jiggling in and out on me. So I threw my dial indicator on here, and if we start right here, it's on 0. We give her one full revolution. That is 70 thousandths. So this thing's got over 70 thousandths run out on the brakes. So I think that axle's bent. I think the flange on the axle's bent, because either that or the axle, the the rotor itself may not be true flat on the axles, but it wasn't dirty, it wasn't rusty, so I think it's just a bent axle. So anyway, let me pop this wheel back off. I got brand new lug nuts for it, and I even tapped on this and got this seated a little better. I don't want to mar these up, these are brand new. Want to take this, just brought this out to see how it was going to fit and make sure everything cleared. I had pre-checked everything in the house when I got the rotors and brakes and all that for it. Brake calipers. Okay, let's pop this off of there. Let me just give you a second, folks. Here we go. Okay, so that's what she looks like. This thing's pointed nose down, so this will actually set more towards the 930. It's not perfectly centered. It's about 10. I set it so it's like 10 degrees up. But those are the Thunderbird parts for a Turbo Coupe. Plus, the Turbo Coupe still had 4 lug nuts. So what I was designing was this piece here. That's just made out of some old laminate flooring material that was thick enough to just cut. I drew up all these parts best I could, and then I cut those out earlier today so I could bolt it all together. The nice thing about this was, from the face of this, where it's the flange of the axle, from that flange to the inside of this bracket, this is a steel bracket that the caliper is attached to, was exactly 1/2 inch. So there's a 1/2 inch spacer in there, 3/8 inch grade 8 bolts, and then these are metric, so they're like 12 millimeter bolts, but they're the 8.8s. So These brackets are going to be anywhere from 1/4 to 3/8 inch, and I'll have those laser cut as soon as I get the design down. Right now my design, it was close here. I had to grind on this to make clearance for this, and I had to radius this a little more, the back side of this piece, to clear the caliper. So there's little tweaks here and there I got to do. And then the other last item is I bought a set of these heat shields. And these are for a 94 to 04 Mustang. And the only problem is those Mustangs had 11-inch rotors, so it's an inch too big. They'll work, but what I may end up doing is cutting these things basically right where they're bent. Cut them off right inside this lip, right inside that lip here. And then I'll make a pattern, a disc to put in here, and one to clamp it from this side, and then I'll just take and tap this around with my hammer dollies and just make a new lip. I'll probably trim these off, somewhere right close to this original edge, maybe just in a little bit, because the size I need is right out to the edge of this rib to be perfect. So, but that's what I'm doing. So I cut these out, and these were just my test fit pieces. So once I get them done, and I'm happy with the situation. The other problem is this bolt hole here is right underneath here, so I need to adjust it. What I'm going to probably do is redraw this part so it comes out and bolts more out here to the outside. I got to keep the bolts away from the inside of this. It has to stay back in here like they are now, so I can bring them out farther this way and that way. Then I can do a concave curve on it like I did here. This one needs to be increased just a little bit on its radius, and then curve this one up around to clear that bolt, because I do have all these drawn in the drawing. And if I have to, I can always move this caliper. I'm not sure if this is a right caliper or left caliper. This might be for the other side, because here's the park and brake cable, and I'll have to check, but it doesn't matter. They're exactly the same. It's just a matter of where the bleeder is going to end up. By the looks of it, this is probably for the other side of the axle, but there is a left and a right. But I just need to make sure all this was going to clear, and apparently this is thick enough that it will hit this and it wouldn't clear. And then I need to clear there, and then kind of get around these bolts underneath this side. So that's kind of where I'm at. So that's what I've been doing here. Again, this is a 7.5-inch traction lock, and what I did find out was apparently in 83, 84, that is not your standard Ford traction lock. That is a OEM Ford Auburn traction lock. It doesn't use clutch packs that I'm aware of. I had used an Auburn on an 88 years ago with a Mustang, and they use cones. The spider gear, side gears on the axle have a tapered back end, and it's a cone with friction material on it, and it rides into a female cone pocket in there. But the problem is, when those things wear out, you can't rebuild them. The housing wears, the cone wears, and you can't rebuild them. You got to throw them away. But I do remember them having all these springs in there to push the gears out the cones out into the clutch material. So this one doesn't have changeable clutches that I'm aware of, because I had an Auburn that looked just like that. And when I was doing some research the other day, it mentioned Auburns. So it's not your typical 8.8-inch rear end. So that's what I'm doing. And then this, I got to replace the nose cover on my car. I was out Ubering the other night, and I scraped that sucker all the way across here and ripped a hole in it here. So I went and bought this one from the scrap yard. It was in pretty good shape. But I called my friend up to ask him about stripping the OEM finish off of these things, and it was a blue one, and my car's white. And he says, well, chemical strippers won't work on the stock thing. So I sat and spent like 2 hours sanding all this off with a DA sander with 80 grit paper. So I sanded it all down, and then in these pockets here for the fog lights, I'm like, let me try that stripper. So I put the stripper in there, and that son of a bitch just took right off. I mean, it took it right out of there. So all the time I spent sanding this, I didn't have to. There was, some scratches and scuffs under here like they normally get, because these sit really low to the ground. So I had to sand all that out. But in the process of sanding it out, it kind of made this thing like a fuzzy texture. You couldn't really see it, feel it, but if you sprayed some, I used thinner and spray it on there to wipe it off, it sucks it in, you know, like a sponge, and you can tell that it just had a texture to it. So this is an epoxy paint I just shot and sprayed on today, and it's really gritty looking. You can see it there in the texture. So I gotta let this cure up good and then sand it out, and I did take some 220, and I was able to lightly sand on this. It's pretty dry, but it's going to really need to cure. So I think I'll be able to wet sand this all down. But I needed this on here, and I put it in kind of thin so it would wick into that fibers, and it kind of looks like tiny little air bubbles, but it's just a little fuzzing from the plastic from sanding it. But I don't know if you can kind of see it. It will smooth out. But I'm going to have to do this all by hand. I'll do it wet sand with some 320-400. And then I'll probably throw on a coat of maybe high build sandable primer on top of this, and then shoot the base coat clear coat. So that's what I've been doing yesterday and today, was getting that thing prepped. So all I got to do is get a shot, and then I got the grill pieces. I got a new one, came with this cover, and my original ones there kept falling out. So this one should be good. So I got two to choose from, whichever the better one is. It goes in this big hole here. And then there's a tiny little strip that snaps on back here with like a 1-inch little air dam, and that always scrapes too. So that's kind of where I'm at, folks. Oh, and I think I might have showed you the distributor last week. I did get the magnetic pickup on it, so I got that all in there, and that's ready to go, and got the reluctor wheel back in it. So now it's just a matter of modifying the vacuum advance module diaphragm assembly to make it boost sensitive. And then but right now I'm gonna touch up the plans for these things and recut them out until I get them where I'm happy with them. Then I'll take it into town and have the guys do me some water jetting and cut me out some fresh ones out of 1/4 to 3/8 inch steel. And then I'll do some I'll zinc plate them and probably put them in the yellow chromate to give them a little color, and then they'll be good to go. But I'll have to check that axle and make sure and see if it's bent. When I tear this all apart, I'll put the dial indicator on the end of the axle and see if it is physically the axle, but I have a feeling it is. And then this one, when I pulled it out and had it, I was looking at the bearing area surface, and there is watermarks in there and some like galling pitting on the axle shaft, so I may have to get some fresh axles for it anyway. I have the other open differential 7.5 inch that originally came out of this car, that I can see how those axles look. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt to buy a good set of axles. I'm not going to bother with upgrading any of this right now, because this is meant to be a street car, but it is going to be, you know, 500-600 horse on the street with those twin turbos. But the only problem you have is when you hook up. So if you get the tires to hook up, that's when you break this stuff. If it's just spinning, it'll go a long time before you ever break them. So that's the plan for now, and then later on I may pick up an 8.8 and do the whole conversion again, and this stuff will just transfer right over, no problem, as long as I stay with the 4-lug pattern in those wheels. But I wanted to keep it stock looking, so that's why I got the original rims. So, all right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and cut her off there and get this thing loaded up tonight, so you got something to look at, so you know I'm not sleeping on the job here. So as always, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave any comments, questions, concerns, and I'll answer them as they come through if I feel they need an answering, and we'll go from there. So hopefully, I was hoping to get this all painted today, but I was kind of stuck on that thing and was curious how it was going to come out, and it came out kind of like I expected. So it's going to take a little more effort to prep it before I can shoot the color. So I got to try and get that work done, finished up this week, and back on the car maybe next weekend at the latest. All right, folks, I'm going to call her quits for tonight and keep posted. I'll try and get another video up next weekend, and hopefully I'll have a little more to go on this axle. But this whole thing is going to be completely stripped down and cleaned out, new bearings, everything before it goes back together, new bushings, new axle seals, new axle bearings, carrier bearings, everything's going to be completely rebuilt, and then I'll either like maybe water blast, sand blast that with my pressure washer attachment, clean it up, and then put on some POR 15 or something like that, turn her into a black thing. And it does. This one does have those factory little slapper bars on it too, as you see. Those are factory slapper bars. And the bracket that they bolt to is welded right to the axle tube. So if I wanted to use these on the old 8.8, I'd have to cut them off. But they're tight. I can't get the bolts broken loose. My impact gun will not do it. But I need to get them off so I can clean it up, and I'll replace this rubber and so forth. So, all right, for the last time, folks, this is going to do her. As always, appreciate everyone watching the videos and leaving comments. And so we'll cut her off now and see you guys next weekend, hopefully. So this is Down and Dawn out.